What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So we're back again for another season preview. We're going over the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to take a look at the roster, at their schedule, and then I'm going to tell you who I think are going to be the starters, or how I think they're going to do during the season, and I'll give you that prediction because what you're here for. Keep in mind, it's all my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let's discuss. But go ahead, become a bro, and subscribe. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. More content on the way to the channel. Hopefully next week I start some sort of series with Madden rebuilds while we're in our off season, now that the draft and kind of free agencies all kind of done, aside from Clowney, if he ever decides to sign. But let's just get into it right now. Let's take a look at the roster for the Minnesota Vikings. So a lot of anticipation is this team's going to take a step back, at least defensively, because the secondary, it's basically gutted. All of their corners gone. There's like one or two guys left there, and they think they combined for maybe 600 snaps last year. The only corners left. They lost over 2,000 snaps in the secondary. That's wild. Well, let's talk the offense, because they lost they lost a pretty vital piece in his own right, Stefon Diggs. Now, Stefon Diggs, he was really, really good here. He's the guy that really stretched the field for the Vikings. He had 7 touchdowns for 20 or more yards, or like on throws of 20 or more yards. No one else came close to that. So they really needed to bring in somebody that could stretch the field like that. I don't think they really did. You could say Justin Jefferson, but he won a lot and almost exclusively last season for LSU in the slot, where he was uncontested, where he could find the holes in zone. Going vertical wasn't necessarily his forte, but he does have the size and speed to do so, and he's very good at the contested catch. So a lot of that indicates that yes, he can do that if they need him to. Another guy that they drafted, KJ Osborne, was actually pretty good at that. He's a pretty darn good vertical threat in his own right. And then you can throw Courtney Davis out of Texas A&M, who's a speedster. But outside of that, I mean, Adam Thielen, but that's not where his bread and butter is. He's really good on the short to intermediate. BC Johnson, that ain't him. Tajay Sharp, never has been. So it's going to be interesting how they fill that void in. I think a lot of this team is going to be focused on the run game, where guess what? They're spectacular. They got Dalvin Cook. They got Alex Madison, who was pretty good last year. And then, I mean, shoot, CJ Ham. Just throw that name out there, man. That guy was actually pretty decent threat, even if it was like a passing play. It was kind of wild. So I think they're going to do a lot of that through the run, which means the offensive line was pretty good at run blocking last season. Where it struggled was its pass blocking, mainly Pat Elflein. He was pretty terrible as a pass blocker. It's been 2 seasons with him as a starter. I'd like to think that they will start someone else instead, but we'll see about that. I don't know. He's been entrenched there for the last few seasons, so he was really good his rookie year, but he was playing center. Moving him to left guard really hasn't been it. You could say maybe they bring in Ezra Cleveland and he comes and starts at guard until he eventually, probably replaces Riley Reef there at left tackle, or you could have vice versa, have Ezra start at tackle and Riley Reef play left guard, but I doubt that it's going to happen like that. Riley Reef was actually pretty good last season, both as a run blocker and a pass blocker. Brian O'Neill, best offensive lineman on the roster. Just saying. Gera Bradbury, he was pretty stellar down the stretch if you don't include the playoffs. Like, I know he started out real rough, but I think he really found his groove. And you got the right guard spot. That's where I think that's going to be a hot position battle there. I mean, with Drew Samiha, who I really like coming out of, believe it was Oklahoma. I really liked him. Dakota Dozer actually got a majority of the snaps last season as a rotation player or a bench player with 263. No, what that? It was 361. Excuse me. Compared to what did Samiha have? I know he didn't have a lot. He only had 31. But I do like Samiha a lot. I think he could definitely come in and be the starter there. I guess you could say they got Kyle Hinton out of was it Washburn? But he's a developmental guy. But your tight ends are a really good thing here for the Vikings because Irv Smith Jr. and Kyle Rudolph are a pretty good combination, which probably they're going to be running more two tight end sets, much like they did last season. Or at least they did much later in the year because they kind of let Irv Smith get his foot in his bearings. Let's see a specific snap count on him real quick. Yeah, he almost had 700 snaps. So, and then Kirk Cousins, man, like I said, it's gonna be interesting. He might turn because I know the guy. He's a slinger. He likes to sling the ball. But it really there's a lot of pressure on Justin Jefferson to be more than just a drag route or an intermediate middle of the field type of threat. They really need him to stretch the field on the outside. Will he be able to do that? That's kind of the question here with that, because I think this team will be in jeopardy when we look at the defense. Let's just go ahead. Let's start with the weakest spot here. It's the secondary. They lost a lot of snaps there in the secondary. Like I said, it was almost it was over 2,000. It was a little over 23. Oh, 2,000. Yeah, it was over 2,300 snaps between Rhodes, Waynes, and Mackenzie Alexander. So essentially, they're replacing their cornerback 1, 2, and their slot. Now, I think they did a really good job in the draft of addressing corner. Jeff Gladney, I was huge on Cameron Dantzler, and then they also got Harrison Hand. But the Vikings typically, especially Zimmer, he doesn't like to start rookie corners, at least right off the bat. He likes to at least let them get their foot in a little bit. You saw that with Mike Hughes. I mean, I think it's undoubtable Mike Hughes will be one of the starters. He had 500 snaps last season. He was average at best. But who will be the outside? Because I think they're going to put Jeff Gladney in the slot. I don't think they're going to start him right away. And Bolton Hill is very interesting here because he actually played particularly well as a rookie with limited snaps. Didn't see the field a whole lot last year. How many snaps specifically? He only had 168, and he was actually pretty decent in those. So I don't think the secondary is that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still a lot scarier as far as there's a lot more concern going into this season than last season. But I think they're a lot better off than what most people think, especially with you got Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith back there, monsters. But they also are developing a bunch of guys behind them in the whole Brian Cole, who's stupid raw, Josh Metlis, and Miles Dorn out of North Carolina. Looking at linebacker, I like that they added Troy Dye, but they're kind of already set there with Anthony Barr. They got Eric Kendricks, and then they also looks like they're pretty high on Eric Wilson. They threw a second round tender on him to ensure that they kept him, and he was actually pretty good. Played 445 snaps last year. He did particularly well. So they look really good there. I mean, they brought in Gates from the XFL, who was easily the best linebacker there. So very interesting. But where this team's going to win is the defensive line, and I think the defensive line looks still pretty good. It'll be interesting to see who will be the third man in the rotation for the defensive end, because last year you had Griffin, Now they don't, so they're expecting a little bit more out of Odenigbo, who was actually really, really, really good. I mean, he had 7 sacks last year. He was pretty solid, only on 400 snaps. Daniel Hunter, we all know him. He's a monster. He's a beast. He was my defensive player of the year last year. But so it's going to be interesting who's going to be in that rotation, because I think you can make a case right away for Kenny Willix while they develop Wonham out of South Carolina. But Anthony Zettel here is a pretty safe option as well. Then on the interior, they got actually a bunch of guys that really could play. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the rotation there is, because you got Michael Pierce, who they brought in from the Ravens. I really thought they were going to give it to Amarn Watts, from who was a rookie last year out of Akron. I thought he played really well, so I thought he was going to end up being at least the starting nose tackle or somewhere in the rotation. But, I mean, Johnson's good in his own right. They also brought in David Moa from Boise State, James Lynch from Baylor, but he's a 3 tech, so him and Shamar Stephen, they're going to be kind of, I think, going to be the rotation there. So a lot of interest, there's question marks on the defensive line, but they're kind of like all the right things you want to be questioning. Man, what is our defensive line rotations going to look like? We are so deep. Oh, golly gee. Granted, they got a few guys that are unproven, but they were highly sought out in the draft. That's the thing. So they brought in talent. So the defense, I think, is a lot. It's not going to be as good as last year. Definitely got worse. In the secondary, you just got to kind of hope and pray that some guys develop. So it's going to be interesting. Let's just go ahead and look at the schedule. The NFC North, the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, they all play each other very, very well. So that, by no means, that's going to be, it's not a cakewalk. It's going to be a tough division. On top of that, they got to face the NFC South. That is tough. Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and then you got the New Orleans Saints. Carolina, we don't know what to really expect. We expect them not to be that good next year, but they could surprise us. The coaching there is very, very good. Then we're going to add the AFC South, which is actually pretty good in its own right. Like, don't sleep. Indianapolis, they acquired Phillip Rivers because they were like, you know what? I think we want to make a run at the Super Bowl. That's a very deep team. Don't sleep on them. Along with the Titans, you could say that about the Houston Texans. They're still good offensively. I know they lost DeAndre Hopkins, but they brought in Brandon Cooks. I'm not saying that's the same thing, because it's not. But they'll still be very good on offense. As well as, don't sleep on Uncle Rico, dude. Minshew Mania. Coming back for year 2. We'll see, I guess. But, I mean, add to that list Dallas as well as Seattle. So those are by no means easy games. So, I think it's pretty tough schedule. So especially early, man. Like, for me, it looks like they'll be limping to their bye. You know, Green Bay, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Houston, Seattle, and then the Falcons. I feel like the Vikings are gonna be limping into their bye week. So. But I mean, they got it. And I can't really say it'll get easier down the stretch, because okay, say you know what, they go on a run, they win these 3 games. Dallas, that's winnable. You know what, Dallas, they didn't play well against teams above 500. So hopefully the Vikings are above 500. Carolina, Jacksonville. So you know what, coming out of your bye, it's not too bad, but I think end of the year might be kind of tough. Like I said, I mean, Chicago, I think Chicago's going to be much better this year, but we'll see. You know what, Detroit at the end of the year might not be bad either, because who knows who's going to be playing quarterback at that point. But I mean, the Saints and the Buccaneers, that's kind of rough. So you know what, second half of the season, not, or at least after their bye, it's not that bad, I guess. It's really just those first 6 games. So let's just go ahead. Let's take a look at what the rosters are going to look like, or at least who I think the starters are going to be. And we're going to start with the offense. I got Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson. They brought in Justin Jefferson to be a starter. That's why they got him in the first round. I went with 2 tight ends, Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. On the offensive line, Riley Reif, Brian O'Neill are your tackles. I kept Elfline at left guard. Highly likely he might not even win in camp. But if he ends up starting in the beginning of the year, I don't think he'll finish the year as a starter. But Gera Bradbury, and then I got Drew Samiha, who I said I was very high on. Looking at the defense, Daniel Hunter, and then you got Odenigbo on the edge with Shamar Stevens and Michael Pierce. But keep in mind, I think there's going to be a lot of rotation there on that defensive interior with your linebackers. And I'm choosing a sub package here because most teams run sub packages nowadays. Eric Hendricks, Anthony Barr, and then I got Mike Hughes. I'm not high on Bolton Hill. I just believe in him. So it's not like I'm putting full faith in him, but I'm like, you know what? He could. And then I got Jeff Gladney as their slot. And then, of course, Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith as their safeties. So let's talk about record. Like I said, I had them having a very tough time at the beginning of the year. And if it makes y'all feel better, I got y'all going with 5-1 in the division. But I have them finishing the year 8-8. I do think the secondary will still be a little bit of a liability. And guess what? You're facing teams that are actually very successful against the pass. I mean, Atlanta, Houston, Tampa Bay should be this year. New Orleans, Detroit. Don't sleep on Matthew Stafford. So, and I mean Dallas, if they got all things going, and Aaron Rodgers, he could pop off for a 5-touchdown game willy-nilly. Just ask the Raiders. Not saying y'all are the Raiders, but you know that secondary. I don't know. Y'all secondary was way better than the Raiders last year. What am I saying? But I think this is honestly their floor. I don't think they're going to be worse than 8-8. So, but that's just how it ended up happening. But it is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And that's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing. And as always, you be easy, my friends. Later.